Hi and welcome to another episode of the Getting Things Done podcast from GTD Nordic. I am Morten and I'm still here with my good friend and colleague Lars Roskil Henriksen. Privet, tavaric.
Sure. And hello to you, Morten, as well.
This was, by the way, an excuse for all our Russian listeners. This is trying to be Russian. Privet, tavaric. Maybe better. Yeah, sorry.
I'll take your word for it. I suggest we continue in English today. Probably easier for everyone, including our listeners. Happy to be here as always, and looking forward to doing another episode with you. If you have not listened to this podcast before, our goal is to support you in learning GTD or becoming an even better GTDer, so you can experience the benefits of GTD, becoming more productive, getting a better overview of all your commitments, be better at staying present with whatever you're engaged in. And we hope that you find these episodes valuable regardless of how experienced you are with GTD. And if you'd like a refresher or learn the basics of GTD, the 5 steps, then we recommend you go back and listen to episodes 1 through 6 of this podcast.
Yes, and today's episode we named it Horrible GTD Systems. And in the pre-show, we had a little, what is that really? And we divided into 2 main categories. Systems that are not GTD systems can be horrible, and they could resemble a GTD system. But it is more the second part we may want to focus on is that if you misuse your GTD system, where you don't follow the best practices, how does that look? That makes up a horrible GTD system. So maybe we should just identify what is a GTD system. What parts does it comprise of, Lars?
Just to build on what you said, there may also be, like we spoke about, horrible may sound a bit rough, but there are certainly places where you miss the best practices and sort of drift off on your own. But it's also worth keeping in mind that, in some cases there are, we're differently wired. Some of us need to see things in one way to get things off our mind, and some people need to see them in other ways as well. So there may be an aspect of that beauty is in the eye of the beholder aspect. So making sure that the system works with the best practices, with the way that you're wired, keep that in mind and balance that with the best practices from GTD. So as to components of a GTD system, having a list manager is obviously a good place to start. Having a place to store your reference material, having a place to store your time-specific actions and information, i.e. the calendar. And in all those areas, you'll come across different ways to not follow the best practices and ending up with a horrible GTD system or really a non-GTD system.
So where do we start? Should we maybe go a little anecdotal? We talked about different in the pre-show, but maybe we should try and what is the worst GTD system you've seen? Somebody called it a GTD system, and it was not. How did this person misuse it? What would be in your coaching a recognizable tale of a not very functional or horrible GTD system?
So I think if we focus on where we would still say, well, that is probably a GTD system, just structured in a way that might have made sense initially, but there are certainly ways to build it in a better way to make it work better for you. I think the most common one that I have seen typically in courses when we add a workshop and we sit down together and we try to help people set up their list manager with their best practices and get everything set up nice and easy. And some people might have already read the GTD book and they've sat down and they've, worked up their own system. And what I've seen is, or a common one that I've seen is that they tend to maybe group projects with next actions, sort of set them all on the same page. I clearly remember, this type of people that are actually very well organized, the type of person that I'm sure their colleagues were asking, why on earth are you heading to getting things done? Because you're so organized, you're already getting things done. So they would show up, and in most cases I've seen it with OneNote. So it tends to be, well, let's have a look at your system. and they will open one page in OneNote, and everything will be in there. All projects, all next actions, all there. And as in that situation, actually getting an overview of their system, that perspective can be helpful. You have a complete overview of all the things going on, what all the next actions are. But separating the two is so valuable. So you have a separate projects list for getting the overview, making sure you have all the moving parts are set up on your next actions list corresponding to what projects are going on, having your actions list set up in a way that makes sense for you. So it is, I can understand the need to connect the two. I like to do that myself and have a list manager that supports that, so I can separate those two views and still have my next actions list to work from. But it is really I've seen it in several occasions that people tend to group that all together. What about you? What's the most common one you've come across?
No, one of the things I and this is when we do coaching or trainings, I often get this question, is that why do you not put your next actions under the project? So that there is because it's this next actions are under this project, and that is the traditional project way of handling tasks, and that can work if you are working on a few but big projects where you are saying, now I want to focus on this project. I would like to see all the possible next actions I can take, and but with the GTD practices is that you should identify all projects that might be relevant for you, big, small, from anything from get a cat until put a man on the moon, and everything in between, and that might be indicating that you will have between 50 and 100 projects, some active, some not active, but in that range, and then it doesn't make sense to have all the next actions under there, because under each project, because then they have to look through all your projects to find the appropriate next action to engage with. And that's why we use what we call the context lists, where you will make a connection between the project and the next action, but the next action will be outside the project, so you can see all the next actions in one context, in one place, so you can make decisions on what you like to focus on. I think you've seen the same, Lars, out there, the same phenomena.
Yeah, exactly. Having that mixed, and it was just so. I think I'm not sure if I might have done that myself as well, way back in the beginning as well, because it is such a natural way to set it up, and especially we have a lot of project managers that attend the courses, and with their background, they're used to having both those two things in there. So separating that can certainly give a sense of FOMO, and you're how will I find the connection, and how will I set all this up, and having that simple next actions list is just so helpful, and being able to look at that and seeing nothing else. I really recognize that from my own brain, that you can just, feed me just a tiny bit too much information, and then my mind will run off, as opposed to just sitting down and getting that done.
Yeah. And the reason we are structuring the GTD list like this, that you separate the next actions and put them on separate lists, is because if you are using projects, then you are using, the limiting criteria for choose what you need to do is built that you start with context. You don't start with priority, which is number 4 on the list of how you choose something to work at. And maybe one project will scream at you more, yell at you, say, do me, because it's urgent, it's important. And then you will go urgent, important, instead of going context, time constraints, mental energy, and then priority. So and that is some of the diametrical differences of a traditional project management system and the GTD systems. So,
and you'll also, at least in my experience, you'll also often come across this with people that are, deadline addicted. That they will be stuck, they'll be waiting, and they'll keep chasing things. So it can be hard to recognize the value in being able to taking a step back and actually choosing what to work on, as opposed to now I have to get that done, and now I have to get that done, because then they will just be stuck in that priority mindset.
Exactly. So, and Another thing that I've seen, and just recently also, that is what I call a horrible GTD system, is that you are not listing your next actions under the project. Sorry, you're not listing your project under the projects. You list your areas of focus. And that is not a beneficial thing with GTD eyes, at least. Because an area of focus or area of responsibility in the GTD terminology is an area you are responsible of maintaining. And I use this phrase to describe the relationship between an areas of focus or responsibility and the project, is that you look at your areas of responsibility and focus, and you will feel very immediately if that's well maintained. Am I handling this on a in a good way? And if you get any cognitive dissonance, if you feel this is not very well handled at the moment, then that area of focus or responsibility will birth a project to change that, so that you take the shift from I'm not happy to what do I need to do, how does the world have to change to make me feel good about this again. And then that's the desired outcome. That becomes the project name. And if you only list your areas of focus, you will never be finished. Because an area of focus never finishes unless you quit your job or, kick out the kid from home or something. Because there is areas of responsibility here. You can't just quit them. They are either there or they're not. And a project has a clear beginning and it has a clear end, and it defines how does done look like. And So have you seen something like this, Lars?
Not too much, but I do come across it, and I actually just had the experience with a coaching client recently that had gone back and played around with projects and tried to simplify the system to make it easier to work with, and ended up with exactly what you said: areas of focus, all the next actions beneath them. What's the project? We don't have that captured anywhere. So that was missing. So we actually just walked through that and how to let's rethink that next action. What's actually the end goal of that? Well, we need to get so and so done, right? So we created a project, dragged that next action to be associated with that, because that was a possibility in the software that he set up with, and then that gave a much clearer overview. But in a few cases, there were some single next actions that were just related to that area of focus, and in his case, he liked to have them grouped. I saw that for myself just now, that been a while since I was in touch with my Norwegian grandfather. We haven't been able to come up there and visit you guys in Norway. So I just sent him a quick text and an email to follow up on, and send him some pictures and things like that. So that was just a single next action related to an area of focus. Yeah. So it was actually under that, but that's also because it wasn't related to a project, of course.
No, that's why private miscellaneous category, yes. So, and that is what I suggest people do when they do this, is that if you have an area of focus that you would like to do single actions under, there's not a project there, then just make a, personal miscellaneous category or project where you can group your single tasks under. So single next actions.
Yeah.
So what else have you seen?
Well, one thing that it could be just on the journey to the good GTD system, but at least I remember for myself, and I've seen it from others, is to have an incomplete system. Because somewhat similar to what you were referring to before, that you had maybe a couple of big different projects, so that was really your projects list. But building up that system and having all those things in there, that really is essential to getting on top of everything, getting everything under control, and really do GTD. And for those of you who have heard my backstory before, I came from the place where I did not capture anything I'll start to write down the most important stuff. And then, maybe it's also good to write down cat food, so I don't have to sit there and think about that all day. And then also as you progress, and maybe some listeners or viewers out there can recognize this, that start to capture things that don't initially fit that definition you have of what normally goes into an inbox. So random things, or problems or issues, or whatever's on your mind. So training yourself to capture that, and then all those things add up to a more complete system. And I think that's not to say that it was a horrible system before, but it was just not a complete reflection of your world. So getting all those out of your head, and also that for me the physical inbox just also took such a long time to get that set up, and I lived in an apartment. I think it was like less than 60 square meters. It was a small place, and dedicating any amount of room in the living room, as there wasn't an office there, it just did not feel right for me. But if it's not there, if there's not an inbox, then you will have stuff other places
everywhere,
where you live. So having a place to place all those things, all adding up to that complete system. I think that's a common thing as well, and maybe just a step on the journey to a better GTD system.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're fresh at GTD, then know that the more complete your system becomes, the more of your projects that you identify, the less they will yell at you, and the more peace of mind you will get. So identifying the projects that you might not identify as a project first is beneficial on so many levels. One is that your brain will be freed up to be present at the moment at a higher degree than before, and it is a substantial difference to have a complete system than a semi-complete system. And the second part that I would like to challenge you on is that if you have something you would like to do something about, and you are doing next action and not recording the desired outcome, then you might forget that you actually committed to do that. I've done that, I think, hundreds of times, if not thousands, before I started in my GTD system and got it complete. It's like, I will do that. And then you sent off an email, and then voila, it was out of my brain because I sent that email and it never returned because the person I sent it to didn't have a good system to respond to me. And somebody got angry with me because I forgot that commitment, and I said, holy Maloney, or something like that, and there you go.
I'm sure that's what you said.
Something holy CRAP or something. And it is such an easy little thing to do. You just have to slow down your thinking for just 1 minute to identify what do I need to be, what should be true in the world when this is over, and just record that as a next, as a desired outcome. Birthday planned for mom, or a great birthday for mom. Just have that somewhere, so that doesn't disappear for you. That is the second thing I would say.
But I struggled with that capturing that next action. I clearly remember I had this was very early in my GTD practice. I had the note for myself at the end of the day as a standard task before I left the office, or before I got off the train, where I could sit and run through my things, that I would run through my sent folder in Outlook and just check, is there anything I've sent here where I need to follow up, track anything? That could be on just chasing different waiting for us, but it could also be on a project level. Do I have all of this captured? So it really took some time for me to get into that habit. So I simply had to establish my own practice of making sure that I checked on myself at the end of the day to make sure that they were all there.
And that is like the mini review, maybe a FOMO-driven mini review. So if you stop doing that, you will not have FOMO, and you will not have the feeling of missing out on something. And you need
And in my case, it was very real. There was frequently some things to catch. Because there was just such a high volume email, or at least felt like a very high volume email scenario. So I would just, answer, and never stop and think after I sent one, what did I actually need to do about this one?
Yeah, and and one of the things I also see that people are having a lack that makes your GTD system full of holes. And I just want to be completely honest with you with this, is that sometimes this slips for me as well, but I'm trying to build my routines so that it doesn't slip. But if you have a meeting with someone, what do you do with your meeting notes after? Is there a next action there captured somewhere? You need to do something. But did you say I will send that email? And do you say that? And if you do, then make sure that that's captured somewhere, and that you don't. You build time after to process them, because if you don't take time to process your notes, you will just do, meet people, and then suddenly something slips, and that could be an important slip, that you will lose that contract, or you will lose that. And for us who live off teaching, getting things done, there is very little leeway for you, very little excuse.
Yeah.
So
often very much need a GTD system to follow up with people, because obviously we work with the busiest people often.
Yeah, exactly.
So they will have maybe struggling to be on top of their email inbox. So a lot of waiting for us are needed.
Yeah, and talking of leeway where we don't have, is that I will be honest with you guys. I did something really stupid a couple of weeks ago. I think you know what I'm talking about, Lars. We planned and I posted this on social media as well, because it is a fun story. It became more fun after the fact, but we planned a live coaching cafe, which we are doing every Tuesday of the month at 8 o'clock CEST. Sorry, first, did I say the second? Okay, first Tuesday of the month at 8 o'clock PM CET or CEST, depending on if it's summer or not. And I was getting ready for that, and then my wife asked me, and I had 2 hours before we started, and she asked, "Can you make some shelves for me? We have a little depot where storage inside the house, and she wanted me to build some shelves between two racks of book racks that we have in there." And I started. I have plenty of time, no problem. I started concentrating, and I totally forgot time. I mean, totally. And because I did sawing, I did drilling with a power drill, I didn't feel the vibration. I didn't hear the ding I got on my arm from my Apple Watch telling me, yes, maybe you should get ready for this. That is so. And I felt so embarrassed by this. And it's a kind of, but it's a real reminder for me that, people are looking up to us as someone who gets things done, but we can also get distracted. We can also be in the moment, and that is a beautiful thing, to be in the moment, but you should not forget your commitments. that is like bad Morten.
In the end, it happens to all of us.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. But that is not a bad system error. It's more like human error. Yeah. One of the things we've not touched upon, but I've made a note about we should mention is bad calendar management as a GTD system.
Yeah.
So I think there is two outliers here. Of this is too much or too little in the calendar. And I think maybe you've seen both, Lars. And could you give me an example of each of them if you've seen both?
Yeah,
what does it look?
Well, the empty calendar looks pretty empty.
Yeah,
that's pretty straightforward. But it introduces an interesting challenge, which is to always having to make a decision on what to do next. So that, from my perspective, maybe sets an even higher bar for what you then capture and maintain on your list of projects and next action. So you have the right things to choose from there. I'm working with someone right now, a lot of things passing by her desk. So capturing the right things, getting that into the system, making a trusted choice when your calendar does not really guide you or force you, however you want to call it, to the next thing. That is, that can actually be a challenge. But obviously the bigger challenge more frequently that we come across is the overbooked calendar. And it really is a challenge to to get things done, depending on, well, obviously depending on what your work is, and that really goes for a lot of what we've spoken about now. But if your work is to just sit in meetings and just say yes and no, then maybe that completely booked calendar, well, we obviously want some space for your brain to stay alert and awake and make good trusted choices during the day. But you can maybe more live with that booked calendar. But in many cases, people tend to be dragged into meetings, not considering the time that they need to define their work, clarify and organize your inbox, and your unplanned work. So those are really a challenge to fit in there. And it really varies from person to person how much unplanned work there is. But let's just say it's a couple of hours a day, which is not uncommon, maybe even in the low end of the spectrum that I come across.
Me too.
Does that then fit with your calendar? Do you have 2 hours of room? Do you have an hour then to define whatever comes in through your inboxes? What other time do you need to work on your list? So it really is a challenge to manage that.
And what would you recommend?
GTD perspective,
I'm sorry, what would you recommend for someone who is in that full calendar, I don't have time to think? What would you recommend them do?
Yeah. Start to well, there are different perspectives that you can take on this. Key thing is to look at what is actually in there. What are those meetings? Are they well-defined meetings? Do they have an agenda? Should you even be there in those meetings? Can you just get the meeting minutes? Can they send someone else from the team to join that, so you can have some more time? What we've recently worked on with one client is to start to block some time further into the future, so you're not dragged into meetings all the time, so that this happens less. We've also set up different systems, ways of opening up the calendar and making more room for these people. And and you can go back to areas of focus like we spoke about earlier, see what are you actually responsible for, why are you there, are these meetings then aligned with the areas of focus and responsibility that you have on your list, for example. And that's where I would start.
Yeah, me too. And the only thing I will add to that is that if you don't do reflection, how can you make sure you're on the right path, doing the right things? So to take time to clarify and organize email, take time to do your weekly review. If you don't do that, then how can you know that you are moving in the right direction? That's not possible. And you will be driven by the latest and loudest, and you will not know if you're doing a good job or not. You will just be in the hamster wheel, running after that carrot in front of you that we'll never get. Especially if you then add the areas of focus instead of projects, you will never finish anything, and then you will be a very tired hamster in that wheel with just a carrot in front of you all the time. So, but and if you then shift focus to reference materials, it's that because I've seen some horrible reference system built, and one is that you just have one drive and everything is on one folder, and with the real horror is that you don't rename your files that you put in this reference system, so it represents something that you can recognize, but it's like xyz2222 scan.pdf. That is, I'm sure everybody will recognize that has happened to you. You put something in there and you don't know exactly what is this. So I would highly recommend people, this is my suggestion, is to find a way to create folders that make sense for you. And the way that I would structure this reference system is a little different than the A to Z that David Allen would recommend you, and this is based on my experience. This works for me. Maybe it will work for you. And so what I do is I divide it into squares. First, the first folder. I have two folders on the let's call it the ground level, down at the core, and that is work and private or personal. And in work, I list the companies that I'm involved with as a folder. And inside that, I have my areas of focus and responsibility. And inside those, I put the projects. So that's the way I do it. And then I have an archive for that archive folder for projects that are finished. So in the same folder as the areas of focus, I have an archive folder where all the old stuff that's finished lives, and everything that's live that I need documents on has a name that's the same name as the project. So how do you do that, Lars? Is that you do something similar?
I don't really have anything corresponding directly to that, because I don't have that much support material that I maintain the structure on. I'm a searcher, so I find that I rarely need to walk through things. But so when it comes to support material, that is often just a search for me. But obviously the reference setup, and for the Danish listeners, I recommend to head on over to the Masterminds group on Facebook. I have posted a walkthrough that we did on Jens from the Danish group did on some questions to ask yourself on when you're setting up a referencing system. But obviously for reference, I have my in both my OneDrive and my Google Drive, and I have all my folders set up in there. And in many cases I can search it out, and then in some cases just more natural for me to navigate to it. So a good question for me to ask is always to keep in mind of how you find that, how you find those things, because in email I have my one folder called archive. It just goes in there, and I search
mine
it.
too.
And I remember one of my very early coaching clients here in Denmark. That was he had a lot of archiving material, so he wanted a very detailed structure. And that was one of the things that we had to change, because he had hundreds and hundreds of folders in Outlook to navigate through, and they were they were even structured. They were all the folders folder names starting with A were grouped in a folder named A. so there was even a tree structure based on the letters of the alphabet. Again, a consequence of having that many folders, it just seemed more easy for him to have that kind of walkthrough. But obviously he spent 10, 15, 20 seconds per email to find the right place, and really had to do a lot of thinking on, well, which folder could this go into, because often there were multiple different categories that they could end up in. So that's probably also a good example of over organizing and then making things way too complex, way more than they needed to be.
So I don't know if that might be wouldn't say the finishing thought, but to create what we call a nomenclature which is a naming policy that you will implement for yourself. And the one I've done for my files and folders, my files, is which date is this, and I use dash, so it will be year dash. This will be then year dash month dash day DD. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's like 21/04/28, which is the date of recording here. And then I would write what is this? It's like it could be accounting report for what, which companies, then GTDnordic.dk or GTDnordic Denmark, and then if I have any additional comments, that will be keywords I will search for. So, but then I can just file it really anywhere, and then just do a search on either the date or the name or the document name, and it will pop up, and I can search GTDnordic DK. Whatever the name, and it will list all the folder that has that, not folders, but all the documents that have that in them. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and that's actually a topic that's really interesting for me as well. It's something that's become more clear over the last year, even, is the difference in requirements for reference material and how detailed we want to do it, because I've seen obviously many different approaches with coaching clients, and we've worked a bit on here in the Danish GTD community as well, and sharing best practices on what works for us. But my archiving needs or reference system needs have always been very, very simple, very straightforward. Not something that I've spent a lot of time on, but something that I'm looking more into now, because obviously there is so much interest in this. So need to see if I can maybe improve my practice in this way.
And the reason I'm doing it this way is because it has helped me tremendously, especially in one way. Is because you buy stuff and you get receipts. And I've started a practice a few years ago where I use an app on my phone to scan. I don't know if I can remember what the name of this app is. I just know where it physically is. It's called Scanner Pro, and I think it is from Riadel. This is my favorite, and that makes I can set up. I scanned the receipt, and then I can then just scan it and change the name. So it will have always the date first in my year dash date etc. And then I would it will have the receipt, and then the word receipt in it, and it would have I will then write which shop or where did I buy this. I buy at Norwegian electronic stores. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm kind of way behind. I'm an addict. But Elkjøp, which is the name of the store, and then dash, and then what did I buy? Like let's say I buy an iPhone, then iPhone 12. So if I make a search for receipt iPhone, I will find all the receipts for iPhone very quickly. Or if I like refrigerator we bought 3 years ago, does it still, what's the status on that? Did we buy 3 years ago? Just write the name and then refrigerator, and boom, it's there. Receipt and the shop name or like refrigerator, and boom, it's there. And when I did that, when I found that to be so, I can be in the shop, I can walk up to the cashier to make a complaint or ask for a refund, or just taking it to repair something. And to be doing that on the phone is super quick, and it's so handy, and you feel like, oh, I'm in control of my world. And that's when I started. I started my name giving convention, my policy that helps me. So if anyone else can use this, good. Here we go.
No, but it is such an interesting topic, because for me, I maybe need a receipt once every 2 years. So it does not make sense for me to invest all that time in structuring everything, because once every 2 years, okay,
you're
I need
not
to
a
run through
technologist.
that folder.
I don't understand this. This does not make sense to me.
Yeah, no, but that's the time invested, and how detailed the picture you want to be. Because when we spoke about this, one of the GTDers in Denmark mentioned that she has I believe it was a Google sheet with the different spices that they normally had, in the different cupboards, and whether they had that at home or whether she needed to buy it. So we all have different levels of how detailed we want to know about where things are. So I'm clearly in the low end. Yeah, exactly. Just to show that we're different. We see that across all aspects of GTD with checklists and everything else. How detailed you want to go. So it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, and I think it is what. And I think laziness is a good way of framing this. Is how lazy can you be? And still be in control.
Lazy.
Yeah, but are you in control? This is the question. Do you find your stuff when you need to find it lazily? Yeah. If you do that, hey, then you're structured enough.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't have to
I
do
have
a lot of
my
search.
physical archive that I just open up. There's one called receipts. Boom, gone.
Yeah. Okay. Good. But you have that with you in the shop? This is my question. Or does it need digitization? Something, yeah. Okay. Anything else we should touch on before we close this episode, Lars?
No, I just wanted, as we talked about the different things here, hopefully this has been, some good tips or thoughts on how you can maybe improve your own GTD system. And my thinking was that maybe, next time you do a weekly review, maybe a good one, just spend a minute to reflect a bit on your system at the end. So how is this working for me? How should I make any adjustments? Do I have the right lists? Do my lists attract or repel me? Is my calendar overwhelmed? Do I need to do something about? Well, the different topics that we spoke about now. Just think about what maybe doesn't work so well for you, and reflect on how you can make it work better. I think that's probably the final words from me.
Yeah, and what I would suggest that if you do what Lars said, make sure you have a 1 hour or 2 hour slot free after that, because maybe you feel I will revolutionize my system now because you get some good ideas and what you need to do. So, but yeah, so if you feel you want to do this, have a look at your lists, your calendar, reference system. Set aside some time after. That's a good idea. So. Well, I think we've reached the end of this episode, and Lars, will you take us out as normal?
Certainly. So we always wrap up these episodes with a quick reminder for you to head on over to GTDnordic.com and have a look around. On that site, you will find links to the different country websites that we have for each of the Nordic countries. And on each of those sites, you can find all of the articles, newsletters, offerings, links to social media groups, where the natives of each of those countries discuss GTD and the tools. And obviously, you can find all of our offerings regarding speeches, coaching, seminars, both virtual and physical. And since we had Justin Hale on not too long ago, so if you're looking for GTD courses in the US or Canada, we recommend you head over to vitalsmarts.com, and gtdfocus.com is where you'll find the GTD coaches in that region. And for everyone else, head over to gettingthingsdone.com to find your local partners. And lastly, as always, we really hope that you find this episode valuable. We love making them, and we really hope that you do benefit from them. And if you do, we always appreciate if you share an episode with a colleague or rate us on iTunes. It really helps the discoverability of the podcast.
Yes, thank you, Lars, and thank you for listening. And until next time, stay safe and stay productive. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.